fair to thank you. To be fair to the people who have arrived on time, I think we will get started. Thank you to everyone who has logged in to participate. I appreciate your attendance. This is a webinar on parks and recreation departments in public health, featuring the Chicago Park District and its activities and the role of physical activity and other public health components in their day-to-day activities. This session is being recorded. So just so that you all are aware of that. My name is Tom Kane. I'm with both the physical activity and mental health sections of the American Public Health Association. And they are two of the co-sponsors for today's webinar. I would briefly like to highlight up front the other co-sponsors of this webinar, and we thank them for their sponsorship. We have the Florida International University. We have the America's Network for Chronic Disease Surveillance. I will do this in English. The Repository of the Americas for Monitoring Chronic Diseases. And last, but certainly not least, again in English, the University of Antioquia. I know that I probably messed that up, which is based in Medellin, Colombia, and who is providing us with the Zoom platform for today's meeting. And I want to thank them specifically for their support and their efforts in putting this webinar on. This webinar was originally scheduled last month in January, and it was interrupted for technical reasons and rescheduled for today. And so we're glad that you all were able to join or rejoin us, depending upon whether or not you were with us the first time. We have 2 hours for this today. I don't know that it's going to go that long. For anyone who has questions that come up during the course of the presentation, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box or the chat box. We'll be monitoring both. And depending upon the question, we may take it during the presentation. We will certainly try to get to it after the presentation is finished. So, but please feel free to engage the subject matter in either one of those two, and we'll certainly get to it. I'll introduce our featured speaker in a minute, but I just wanted to make a couple of preliminary observations about this webinar and why we're doing it and what it means. I believe that in this grand scheme of public health, the role of parks and recreation departments is probably not as appreciated or as visible as it should be. You know, there was a recent TV show here in the US and probably seen abroad that was a comedy about parks and recreation. And I think if nothing else, people may have gotten a very comedic view of what parks and recreation departments do. But obviously there's much more to what they do than what that TV show may have represented. But in that regard, I think a lot of people have a mistaken view of parks and recreation departments are places where people go to engage in unstructured physical activity. And I'm thinking specifically kids and going to parks after school. And quite frankly, if that's all there was to the role of parks and recreation departments, that's not a bad thing. Given the epidemics of, you know, things like obesity and type 2 diabetes, anything that gets people moving, gets people active, gets people to be non-sedentary, especially when they're young, is a major accomplishment in and of itself. But as we will see in today's presentation, Parks and Recreation departments play a much more viable and much bigger role in the public health efforts of communities wherever they're located. And whether that is physical activity, whether that, as we will see, more nutrition, whether that is young people, whether that is old people, whether that is a place where people can gather and integrate with their social networks, whether they're operating programs that are evidence-based research, or whether they are in fact the laboratories for research that produces evidence-based and results. The Parks and Recreation departments play a huge role in our day-to-day lives. So with that, I want to introduce our featured speaker today, Colleen Lamel Harmon. She is the Senior Project Manager and also a registered dietitian with the Chicago Park District's Department of Community Recreation. The stated mission of her unit is to educate Chicagoans and link them to fitness and health resources, and to promote health, wellness, and physical activity to Chicagoans of all ages. The flyer for this webinar has a much more detailed biography for Colleen. I won't read it all. Feel free to look at that to understand where she's coming from and what really her role is with the Park District and its role with the citizens of the city of Chicago. And as a acknowledgement of a conflict of interest of sorts, even though I'm in Washington, D.C., I'm a product of the Chicago Park Districts, and quite frankly, wearing one of their t-shirts. So with that, let me turn it over to Colleen, and Colleen, you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you all for allowing me to speak. I've had a very, very strong dedication. I've been at the Park District, for 21 years, which I'll go to the next slide. There we go. I've been here actually over 21 years, and my background has always dabbled in public health. So I got my dietitian degree and suddenly started working in women, infant, and children. And as you know, that's a supplementary program for pregnant women and children. And I realized how important it was for food access. So after many years working as dialysis dietitian in low socioeconomic neighborhoods in WIC, I came across a Park District job that was meant for a fitness guru, because Chicago was named the fattest city back in 2001. So with that said, I was supposed to be a temporary job. I was supposed to be there for 9 months. And as I say to all my interns and peers, is grow your roots deep and wide. And after 21 years, I still feel like I'm new in Chicago in this job, because there's so much opportunity. And to be honest, there's so much more to do. And so I've actually just I'm in my last 2 months of my internship, getting my Master of Public Health. So to all of you, I tip my hat, because you have inspired me through your profession to understand the importance of not only parks, but policies, and the opportunity for people to understand the importance of policies in parks. And so with my dietitian background and then teaching fitness, I've always focused on obesity efforts or obesity prevention through fitness and nutrition. What I'm finding, especially through COVID, is social emotional health, is mental health, is you can't pick one or the other. It's really a triangle of mind, body, and really your spirit. So being a certified Parks and Recreation professional is something that, if you don't know yet, it's a very important part of being a Parks and Recreation professional, especially again now, because ethics, social determinants of health, where you live determines how long you live in some zip codes, at least of Chicago. And I think that's a national focus right now, our health disparities. And I've learned a lot of this through working with Lurie's Children's Hospital, which is a subdivision of Northwestern Hospital, which is pretty nationally renowned. So I've been a member of the Chicago Department of Public Health. Hopefully you know Dr. Arwady is always on TV in Chicago if you keep any local news for Chicago. But they put forward their Healthy Plan 2025. And because of advocates in the Park District, we're part of that plan. And Tom, I'm glad that you mentioned type 2 diabetes, because again, people don't see that they can change their lifestyle through physical activity. And no matter where you live, there should be a park within 10 minutes of walking distance. And I do want to just say that I'm a mother of 3 park kids. So if I didn't have the parks, I wouldn't be able to have my job, my sanity, being able to go back to school, really, because parks are seen as, unstructured play, but they also, from early childhood to 6 to 12-year-olds, and really even with teens, we definitely grow a career path line. And so pipeline to career is something that hopefully we can jump on, letting the young adults know about public health and parks. So as I was researching for this presentation, I thought it was really interesting, and I won't read all this because I know even if we had 2 hours, I wouldn't be able to go into too much depth of each slide, but where we started. And so we, as a park district, started before the city was built, which I find really interesting. So when we say the roots of the city, we really are. We were established in 1836. And so before the city was, officially incorporated, the early leaders, and thankfully, they saw the importance of saving lakefront property. And again, I'm not going to ask for a lot of technical here, but if anyone has been to Chicago lakefront, would you put up your virtual hand, please? Okay, so a few of you. If you go to Chicago, please try to visit the lakefront, because it is a sacred land that we were able to, with Burnham's efforts, to save the city from having the lakefront be built with different buildings and sky rises and all of that lovely concrete jungle that we see in cities. So when they were preparing the land maps to generate revenue for the city, it was really important that we were able to build the Illinois and Michigan Canal and also save public ground, which is, I've bolded it's common to remain forever open, clear, and free of any buildings and other obstruction whatsoever. So a little fun facts, when George Lucas from Star Wars tried to build a museum on the lakefront, there was a lot of uproar in Chicago. And although we would always love to, have that, it did obstruct free to all. So that is one example that after all of these years, almost 200 years, it really does still stand. And Grant Park is the picture that you'll see in most of the slides here. Okay, our mission is to enhance the quality of life in Chicago by becoming the leading provider of recreation and leisure opportunities. And as we say leisure opportunities, that really does connect with mental health, hopefully, for all of you. To provide safe, inviting, and beautifully maintained parks and facilities. To create a customer-focused and responsive park system that prioritizes the needs of children and families. And as I'll just jump through below, because I believe in assessing your mission and your core values often, early and often, because things do change, trends do change. And right now, these are our core values, but I'm actually working on how do we implement new core values for the out of school time and the importance of out of school time. And if you're not familiar with out of school time, we will get into that later. So children first, best deal in town, which I would like to say most equitable deal in town. I'd like to change those words as we look at trends. Built to last. So again, building on what we have for infrastructure, but also the importance of policies and partnerships that really grow more opportunities. So that's where built to last really stays. And then extra effort. So new ideas, being innovative, believing in professionalism as a park and recreation professional, communication, technology, and really the great customer service that we need to give the minute you walk into a park, whether it's passive or active. So as you can see here, this is the Chicago Park District. And so you will see how many acres we have, how many acres of natural areas we have. Growing every day, really the planning. We have 604 parks that grows every year. So what's great about that is you can see the green space in this Google picture here. It doesn't show all the park, but it does show where the actual large green spaces are.
Can you stay on that slide for a second, Colleen?
Yeah.
I think you'll get to this later in the presentation. I just want people to recognize the fact that along the lakefront there, the city boundary along the lakefront, Um, that's most all open space, not just where you're showing the highlight in downtown. But there are beaches up and down the length of the city, which I can refer to, and maybe we'll talk about in a few minutes, as part of the quote unquote green space. That is so important for discussions related to not only physical activity, but mental health in the current environment.
Yes, and if you have a piece of paper, I'm a doodler during meetings, writing down questions. Let's talk about that, because during COVID, that was really tough. We closed our beaches, we closed our parks pretty much just for moving through. So I'll get to that in a little bit, but that was a people vacation. They take, stay vacations in Chicago, and that was a hard hit on mental health. So again, this is Grant Park, it's really beautiful. And as you look at our logo, it really does represent skyscrapers and trees grown right in the city. And this is the original Grant Park, where that was, always saved to be free. So this is an interesting slide. And so I'm going to give you a little activity. Now, don't do anything. I'm trying to move this out. Center your eyes on all this opportunity, which again, hopefully continues to grow every day with planning to offer transition and change. Find 3 things that spot out to you, and hopefully they'll be different for everyone, but what are 3 things that really stand out to you? And then just write them down. Okay. So again, these keep changing. I'm noticing right now we already have an additional fitness center. We're at 70 fitness centers. So just think about the 3 things that you prioritize. And when you look at, the 3 million people that we have using hopefully the Park District, we have to have something for everyone. And the only way to do that is to get community input. And that is a very important thing, that making sure that our leadership understands that as new leadership comes in, whether it's as a manager or a superintendent, we have to make sure that we are engaging the community to make sure that what you see on this page is meeting the needs of Chicagoans of all ages and all abilities. And when I say abilities, I really stress on abilities. We have the largest Special Olympics program. Special Olympics was created in Chicago. We're very proud of that. So just keep that down, because hopefully I get to most of these. I know Tom wants to go to the football fields here, talk about Soldiers Field at some point. Okay, so demographics. So who do we serve? How do we serve? What is our population? We serve about 350 people, 50,000 people a year. However, that's only the people that we can collect data on. So I personally think there's a lot more than that, because it's really hard to track people running up and down the lakefront, walking through Columbus Park on the west side, walking in Calumet on the south side. And really, the border of Evanston, we're literally a street away from Evanston. We're a street away from Oak Park, if you know those large cities and large villages and towns in Chicago. And we border the state of Indiana. So with our beaches on both sides, we literally have to border different laws. And right now we're going through a drowning prevention initiative, and we just got a grant. And so it's an Illinois-Indiana grant. So as you think about policies, try to think about policies that affect different state levels. And so looking to make sure that we're serving all these populations, it is interesting to me, and hopefully to you, how large our older population is that we serve at the Park District. So with that said, we have older adults here, which is 35 to 64, and I'm definitely in that age range. And then the seniors. So again, it's keeping up with, do we do a survey in 2017? It's time to do one again in 2022. Could that age group changes as we hit that? So we have to make sure that we're offering all of those opportunities. We do have senior games in Chicago, and depending on what the community you're in or which agency you're looking at, seniors start at 50 in some ways, 60 in another, and then 62 and 65 in others. So different agencies are looking at different ages and how we address them, how we call them, how we name them. And that is important, that we're always looking at inclusive language and people first language.
I just want to go back to that point. again, what I mentioned at the top of the presentation, if people think that parks and recreation districts are for young kids, the story that actually it should be told is that parks and recreation districts are an important aspect in the lives of everyone in the community, and in some ways is extremely important to seniors, where they can have a place to create social networks, get social support, have a place to put some meaning into their lives if they're otherwise alone or otherwise isolated in their communities. And to be able to do that adds extreme value to the way public health is administered in any particular jurisdiction.
Thank you, Tom. And you bring up a good point. And as you look at this, I'm glad you said to go back, because if you look at this, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, really a quarter of the pie, a little bit less than a quarter, is what's considered children 18 and under. But I think it's really important to bring that up because we're so used to saying 6 to 12-year-old elementary school. Problems can happen when you put an 18 and a 14-year-old together. It's really hard, and this sometimes happens, is in a day camp, we may have 2 instructors, but the ages range from a 6-year-old or a 12-year-old. So being able to be trained on how to look at that wide range of youth is really important as well. As a seniors, someone who's 60 might think very differently of what someone who's 82 wants. And so that is a challenge. And so especially with health advocacy, we do look for input. So please, later in this presentation, if there's an idea you think you have, please share it with me, because I do want to say, I want your input to go back to the table with our teams and make some changes with that. I did a presentation a few years ago with National Recreation and Parks Association. And we, out of that meeting, we came up with intergenerational meal serving. And so it was really interesting for our seniors to be teaching our preschoolers how to set a table, which again is a task that we rarely teach anymore because people are eating out so often. So really dig deep, think out of the box, bring up your ideas. Ethnic breakdown. And again, this continues to change, that we can't even keep up with our statistics on this. But programs and people we serve. So here's our breakdown of ethnic. I'm going to say it because I do want input, is we did have, a few years ago, we had a real scare of people identifying themselves to be Hispanic because they were worried about deportation. We had ICE show up in a movie in the park. These are real problems that affect park usage. And I want to bring those up because I want you to feel open to talk about that. And we really had to make sure that we didn't ask too many questions or people weren't going to come to our programs. All of our data asking is optional. We always allow, you can answer a few questions, you can answer all, you can answer none. And then with, the people with special needs, like I said earlier, we really focus on people with special needs. I'm actually doing my master's internship on obesity prevention in people with special needs, because although we offer programs, we don't currently offer a large focus on obesity prevention for people with special needs. And the obesity rate is increasing post-COVID in that population. Right here, we have Tommy Shimoda, who made the last Olympics. I thought that was really relevant right now with the Winter Games coming to an end. But he won the gold medal in the Winter Games for the Olympic Winter Games. So I thought that was really, really a shout out to him. And he really comes to our programs and is a role model. We also had Michael Phelps come about 8 years ago, and he talked to our swimming program that were in high African-American population to show not only the need, to have a drive to potentially be in the Olympics as an athlete, but really the need to learn how to swim as a life skill. So looking at that local level, but also national level. I want to focus on this, and if anyone has questions. So we do have the previously named Rehab Institute of Chicago, which I think is just the best place ever. I've been able to meet Dr. Rimmer also through NCPAD, National Center for Physical Activity and Disability, but also now it's called the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. And so our park programs, our sled hockey worked hand to hand with RIC. I'm sorry, I don't have a picture of it, but our beat baseball, which is really close to Wrigley Field. We have a blind and deaf baseball program that is very popular, so popular that we had to buy some pods, those storage centers, to store the equipment. So it really is important to know that you have hospitals, which I'll get into a little more, that you have hospitals to assist with programs. But again, we have physical disability, we have cognitive and intellectual disability. So does anyone have any questions on that partnership?
I would point out that the rehab, the RIC, which is now the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, is the #1 rehabilitation hospital in the country.
Okay. Well, if you get a question later, please let me know. Okay, next slide. So this is our focus slide. And again, as Tom said, this is probably my baby here. So health and wellness and CPD. We Move Chicago is an initiative we started about 9 years ago. And We Move Chicago promotes, educates, and motivates Chicagoans of all ages and abilities to adopt a healthier lifestyle through moving more and eating better. I'm going to stop on that because what I want to say is we just met last week to talk about this statement and looking to change it. And I actually would love your input in the chat or speak up to change the statement of We Move Chicago promotes, educates, and motivates Chicagoans of all ages and abilities to have the access to adopt a healthier lifestyle through moving more and eating better. Because what we're learning through health equity is if there's not access to adopt, you're leaving out that population to even try to incorporate what we're asking people to do in Chicago. And again, where you live predicts your life expectancy. So We Move Chicago was in alignment with Mayor Lori Lightfoot and the Department of Public Health Healthy Chicago 2025 plan, which is very similar to the Healthy People, 2020, 2030. And this really started with our past mayor, Mayor Rahm Emanuel. I've been here long enough to go through Mayor Richard Daley for a few terms, Mayor Emanuel, and now Mayor Lightfoot. And with Mayor Daley, we actually had a Mayor's Fitness Council where he would come out and put on fitness events. So it really does show you have to be involved with the mayor's office to make change. You might not always agree, but that's what's good is they have these conversations to promote the awareness of public health in parks. And it's accomplished through people, places, programs, and partnership. Without that 4 Ps, and really I should say health promotion, there should be 5 Ps, it really cannot hit the element that we want to in the Chicago Park District. Okay, so I'll pause here. This is a brochure we put out. We haven't been able to update it with COVID in a while because almost everything went virtual. Our fitness centers are finally open, and I'm ready to pause here and answer any questions on that. But we have 70 fitness centers, which has grown from the first original slide. We have fitness courses, which I'll go into. We did shift very dramatically, teaching all of ourselves to take fitness classes with our own phones and iPads to offer virtual classes. We have yoga, we have high intensity with low rates, strength training, kickboxing, Pilates. We have, and I will actually talk about, we don't have Zumba anymore. We don't have Pound anymore. What's really tough with those name brand and licensed classes is keeping up with so many parks to keep those licensed. And so we're trying to figure a way around that. Walking programs, we'll get into that. Events, we have Go Runs. Go Runs are actually free events for families in different neighborhoods that are timed through the Chicago Area Running Association in partnership. But it's nice for families that can't get to the lakefront or they don't feel they would ever want to do a half marathon or a marathon, is to start slow. So we have family 1 miles and then we have the 5Ks. Yoga in the parks, we do that. You can see this on the lakefront, the picture. And then awareness initiative that I'll get into, like Move Your Way, which hopefully you all know about. It's out of the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. And then we also do this with partners and contracts. So I'll pause here for you to take a look at all of our fitness centers. That is a map of Chicago. Why is it colored? It's colored because we break down into 3 regions. We have a north region up at the top, we have a central region in the middle, and we have a south region down at the bottom. And these are where we have the parks. And if you look, again, following kind of the lakefront trail there, we make sure that we have health equity through fitness centers, making sure that our fitness centers are affordable, making sure that they're in every neighborhood. In a lot of neighborhoods, if you look at where Grant Park is, you're not going to see any stars because we have so many commercial fitness centers there that there wasn't a need for fitness centers. And based on the zip codes and the mean salaries, we want to make sure that that they are in areas that don't have fitness centers and don't have fitness centers where they could afford them. So Park Fitness RX, I want to pause on that one. What is Park Fitness RX? What that is a 3-month fitness center membership that park users can come in with a doctor or clinic prescription that says that one of our customers has an obesity related disease. That could be diabetes, it could be arthritis, it can be cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure. That is what we have right now. And Tom and I've talked about this story often. We had his past superintendent, bless his heart, Tim Mitchell, and he was 498 pounds. He was morbidly obese. He got gastric bypass and went down to 198. But also with the gastric bypass, he was able for some years to keep it down by exercising. Now, again, he realized that he made a good salary and could do that, but the people that didn't wouldn't be able to have access. And so we strangely had a meeting with the American Medical Association and National Institute on Health. And he came over to my desk and said, Colleen, you're the expert, come with me. I was fairly new at the Park District, went to this meeting in the American Medical Association, I'll never forget it, on the 18th floor. And we're talking about obesity, and all the doctors were around the table with the agency superintendents and commissioners and said, what can we do in Chicago? And he stood up first and he said, Colleen, you're going to create a program that starts to have fitness prescriptions for health, and you're going to allow fitness centers for free. We didn't have it all tied down then. We came to 3 months, how we're going to do it. That was my job early in my ages here. But we figured it out. We sent out letters to doctors. We sent out letters to clinics. We didn't have social media back then. But this was early on. This was in about 2006, 2007, when we started this. And it's been going on since then. Park prescriptions were pretty new. I don't remember them having them around nationally, but they could have been. But this is something that we've been able to stay. What's interesting is a lot of people have been asking, do you do a mental health prescription? And so that's a new one on the table. But I wanted to see if anyone had questions on the free fitness memberships or even the free senior hours, because we understand with seniors, you may have a cut in income. And so we want to make sure that it's accessible. Okay, and Tom, if you can monitor the chat, if there's any questions. I can't see the chat since I'm sharing my screen.
Got it.
Thank you. And I just pulled an old logo. This is one of our free fitness weeks. Every January, we do about 2 weeks. It's about 10 days of free memberships that anyone can come in and try it, hopefully, if they're joined. But our memberships are pretty affordable. They actually drop in some areas from, well, no, it's about $10 to $22 a month. So you're looking, if you're a senior, you can get that for half price, or you can go during senior hours and it's free. But we also, allow the free fitness prescriptions. And then we also, with CrossFit and different teens wanting to come into our fitness centers, we have created some teen fitness centers. They don't seem to like the selectorized equipment as much, so we put more of the weights in there. We newly, just to talk about relevance, during COVID, we actually put in a fitness center in one of our high schools that shares space with us. And I was lucky enough to be a guest there, and I had 23 teens show up on a Friday night to work out, which I thought was pretty impressive. And that's during COVID, wearing masks. So that more picture of the fitness centers. These are the type of equipment. We have cardiovascular, and then we have strength equipment as well. So this is a beautiful, this is one of our newest fitness obstacle courses. It was actually funded through, part of it, strangely enough, which I'll get into a little bit later, is the Coca-Cola Troops for Fitness grant, which Coca-Cola wanted to give us money. They were our beverage contract. And we put in a policy, which I'll get to, that all of our vending machines are 0-calorie free drinks. So no sugar sweetened beverages. And part of the contract was to also offer physical activity to residents. So this is in our like Bronzeville, near Hyde Park area. This is one of our fitness courses. And on the map, you can see different areas of the city that we're in. Okay. Okay, this I'm going to spend a minute or two on because I think this is of utmost relevance right now. At least in Chicago, we have racial divide, and I think nationally it's a pretty similar problem that we have, that we together from public health and parks have to look at having some problem solving here. And it's not new. So if you look at the left-hand side picture, that's Douglas Park, which right now, actually at my office was there, very heavy on one side to be African-American population or Black population. And on the south side of Douglas Park, it's a very large park, Hispanic, very large gang line. So as you see here, in 1914 on the left side picture, that is an all white, for the most part, park, pool. Union Park, which again, my office has been in the 21 years here, this was one of the parks that, interestingly enough, the west side, let's see if I can pull that up, there you go. In 1917, we had a West Chicago Park Commission, which again, I didn't know about until I did this presentation. So thank you for making me dig deep in the archives. Where all community members were welcome. So West Side neighborhoods, mostly African-American, actually only 40% in 1920, we had our all community park open. I mean, how crazy is that, that we had white parks and Black parks and where you could swim and where you couldn't swim. But it's not new because we had the racial riots at Rainbow Beach. So again, this is just a problem that continues to have. And so all of our parks obviously are open to all, but it is interesting that Union Park, which is very heavy African-American and Black, but also very gentrified right now, was one of the first parks that opened up. And then here is one of our notoriums at Ecker Park, which is in Westtown, right outside of the downtown loop area. So a lot of different pool, a lot of different shapes. They have a lot of different, some are zero depth, some have slides. Where not many water. I actually live by Portage Park where the 1972 Olympic trials were, and that actually still has a high dive. I think it's the only one in Chicago, but wanted to bring up the beaches here. We have 24 beaches along the lakefront. It's not my expertise area, but with land, we have had some beaches wash away. And so when you look at erosion and global warming, we have been affected in Chicago by that. And I think that's really, from an environmental justice standpoint, when people, don't think about throwing plastic water bottles in the lake, it's a good example to show our young children how that can make a change. What we do has reactions, right? And so we've been able to do that by, unfortunately, having to close beaches, but using it as an education opportunity. Okay, questions on our lakefront or beaches. Our beaches are 26 miles and growing. We had a lakefront that was 26 miles and it's actually extending now. I think we're almost 30. We go almost right into, well, we go right into Indiana. And we have a lakefront trail that goes into Big Marsh, which is old swampland. And we've been able to build that, which is a bike trail that runs right through Big Marsh, which is Headwish, which is the southeast side of Chicago, and then goes right into closely the Forest Preserve, which starts Indiana borders. Okay, enough on that. I could go all day. Golf courses. If anyone likes to golf, raise your hand. We have 8 golf courses. So as you see down at the lower picture here, that is once again our lovely Grant Park that's been saved with the Burnham plan to not build any buildings. So you see that's one of our golf courses. That's actually South Shore Cultural Center, which is a picture right in the middle. Very hot place for weddings. It takes about 2 years to get a wedding planned here, but it's one of our most beautiful golf courses in the Hyde Park, well, actually south of Hyde Park area. And then that's Jackson Park, which was built in 1934. A little bit of relevance around Washington, D.C. So that is close where we are looking at having, not only it's the Obama Library is very close, but also looking to have more golf courses over there. And Tiger Woods is actually part of some of the planning on that. So another fun fact. So walking programs. I don't know if any of you have been involved, but hopefully you have been. There is a Park RX program nationally now. The originator actually came from Chicago Park District, and we're looking at nature walks for mental health. And so we've been working with Northwestern on having nature walks, and doctors prescribe for mental health 3 walks a week, or walking 10 minutes outside. Each prescription is very different. But what we've been doing in Chicago is having, you can put in your, whether it's headphones or ear pods, whatever it is, and having walking tours through our bird sanctuaries, some of our lagoons, some of our most charming and really gems in the city to create nature walk. And then we also do walk with the doc. So we've had some doctors tape some podcasts that you can listen to while you're walking through the park. So you're almost getting some therapy while walking. I think that's a really important thing to bring up for public health professionals to expand on that. Lakefront trails, we talked about that. And we've done a lot of mental health walks. We have suicide walks. We talk about the importance of nature when you have mental health challenges, and that has skyrocketed post-COVID, as we've been talking about in Chicago, and I think nationally. So that's me about 14 years ago with my daughter walking through the North Park Nature Center, which you probably think I change offices every year. I have an office at right now. But what I want to bring up, which is important about the Nature Center, is that was our TB center in the 1970s, where when you got TB, you were sent to North Park Village to live. And they had nature areas and auditoriums and dance venues. So it's important now with COVID, right? Like, what did we do with people when they were sick? So again, very important.
Colleen, one of our attendees, Jack Sears, has asked, how many lifeguards and water safety instructors do you employ each summer?
Great question. And I can't give you a solid answer on that, because for 2 years we weren't hiring. The last year we only hired half of what we need. So we usually hire about 800. We are nowhere near that. So we are having a real challenge hiring the lifeguards we need. So I was just in a meeting yesterday that unfortunately we're only going to be able to have some of our pools open 5 days a week versus 7, which we always had traditionally. So for various reasons, but we are having a whole new rollover in our beaches and pools department on training, on making sure that we're hiring ethnically balanced, which we always do and we always have, but really looking at ways to hire lifeguards, because we've had a real challenge.
And they are certified lifeguards, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So certified by the Red Cross, actually, to get a little more detailed on that. And so what's interesting, and again, we don't have a solution, is given that the beaches were closed, parks, pools were not open for a whole year, if not actually more than that. But also just sedentary lifestyle picking up, is that we're having lifeguards that aren't able to pass the swim test. It's a very rigorous program. You have to pass, you have to get CPR trained, you have to go through the Red Cross training, all of that before you even take the swim test to pass the lifeguard test. And then you have to be hired, through all the background checks and all that. So it is a challenge. Any questions more on that though? And you have to live in the city. So a lot of kind of jumps that you have to make to become a lifeguard. But one thing that we've been doing for years is working with our After School Matters program. And so as a high schooler, we have 2 ways of recruitment and training, really pipeline to career. So you can get paid a stipend to do the After School Matters program, where you're training through high school to become a lifeguard. And so that's another way to get people, where I think you're getting about, don't quote me, $400 to $500 through the stipend, depending how long you do it. And then you're already trained to become the lifeguard, and a lot more realistic to pass that test. And then we also have something called the Junior Guards program, and you can join this as early as preteen. So 8 years old, 9 years old, you can start the Junior Guard program, all the way 10 through 16, where you're going out in the beaches, you're getting on a bus. Instead of going to day camp, you jump on a bus, you get dropped off at the lakefront. and you are learning, it looks like a mini Baywatch out there, you're learning lifeguard skills that young. So most of our lifeguards, before COVID at least, that is how we were getting our guards prepped and trained to hit that number of 800. And if anyone has questions on lifeguards, our trainings, our equity training, I definitely can follow up with you after on that and give you some direct people, because I'm in community rec, but I'm definitely not the expert on that. But Jack, if you have questions, we can talk after. Okay. Program impact to increase strategic public health initiatives. This is a study we do. I'm in charge of community rec grants, but I do a lot of the research. I love research, obviously. So we did a research project with University of Illinois at Chicago on walkability with the Trust for Public Land. So they were out for months doing different walkability tests. We were named one of the top cities. Again, this is going back 2019, which wasn't that long ago, but we haven't done a ton of research since then because of COVID. But we were named we came in number 4 for one of the most walkability cities. So we're pretty proud of that. And although New York is a larger park district, if you have any New York fans out there, they have more green space, but we have more programming in terms of actual people in the program. So we keep in touch with New York often. And park access is really a public health concern, a good, at least to keep on the top of our radar. From walkability to make sure where we're planning, where we're building, that there is a park or at least a pocket park within 10 minutes of where you walk. We were part of the president's 10-minute walk program. At the time, it was Mayor Rahm Emanuel, and he was part of that program, but making sure wherever we build has a park. It could be a whole other presentation, but it doesn't, you could have a park right near you, but if you can't get to that park, that truly is not access. And really with violence right now, that might be a barrier to get to your park as well. And so we're talking about that. Okay, so this is where hopefully, we're almost at the hour mark, but hopefully we have some community connections to health here. And we have some discussions. So here's one that I want to throw out at you, which is very interesting. We got $80,000 from the National Recreation and Parks Association to create parks as nutrition health hubs. So pretty much the challenge to us was, we'll give you this money. How are you going to increase access to food and nutrition education through a health equity lens? So I was in charge of the summer food program. Now I'm not directly in charge of that, but again, very connected to it. So at one point before COVID, we were offering 1.3 million meals a summer. So 1.3 million meals a summer, that's a lot. We would offer either breakfast, all with lunch, or a snack. So you can only offer through the federal food program 2 meals a day to youth. And I say youth because I want to bring that up. So Tom, remind me if I don't bring it up, why I'm talking about youth. So it's a federal food program. There's a summer food program, and then there's also the child and adult food care program. We have access and ability to offer it through youth. The Department of Family Support Services offers it to seniors through Meals on Wheels and also the senior meal program. We have about 7 of those in the city. Some live within the parks that are senior centers. And then what we started doing, I took over the food program about 12 years ago. And I asked the person in charge, why are we not offering year-round meals? And there was really no answer why. And so again, building your champions, we now offer the after-school supper program. So when the kids get off they get to our park from schools, we're offering a meal as well, which is called supper program. We tried to make it look more like a snack because they didn't necessarily want Salisbury steak and mashed potatoes. So what we did with a food taste test to see what they wanted. And they wanted the zucchini bread or the cinnamon bread with an apple and a slice of cheese. So making sure that we're getting input on what meals we serve is also something that we did through this. And then also offering food of the month through Commit to Health through National Recreation and Parks Association. Through this grant, we were able to team up with different partners And we did pop-up farmers markets where people with a link card, with a supplemental food card, could come and actually get food from the farmers market at no cost at all. We also offer Fun with Food, which is a hands-on nutrition education class. So the kids actually learn how to create different foods, different recipes, yogurt parfaits, black green brownies, all that lovely stuff. But also some food etiquette, which I think is very important. So again, back to having farmers markets, it's very important that we don't only offer those in Lincoln Park and the trendy places, but we offer them in all areas of the city. Okay, so parks and health and hospitals. I've been lucky enough to work with Lurie Children's Hospital, which used to be called Chicago Children's Memorial Hospital. And it's a very national known hospital, from what I understand. I know I'm biased, I live in Chicago, but it's a pretty renowned hospital. So I've been working with Lurie's for over 20 years, but started research with them 17 years ago. So what kind of research did we do? From a public health profession, what ideas can you work with your park on? Well, if you know what an accelerometer is, it's like a gyroscope of movement, speed, direction, height, and really measures the moderate to vigorous physical activity that these children are participating in. So we teamed up with Lurie's, we strapped on some accelerometers. It really looks like a pedometer, but there's no screen. And we put them in our Park Kids program, which is where kids go after school 5 days a week for about 3 hours. What's interesting about that is we found that the kids were most active. We have different games. We also put some inflatables up, very active in those areas. But then we found an extreme amount of sedentary time, traditionally playing board games. So what we looked at is how do we change board games to physical activity games? And some of you might be familiar with SPARK, which is sports play and active recreation for kids. So what the hospital was able to do through research is look at different games playing that had more physical activity. And then second, the most sedentary time was transitions. So what we found in parks and also shared with schools is when people and youth, really youth, are going from different 3-hour rotations, they might go to the playground, which was one of the most moderate to vigorous physical activity places, really vigorous, but they would be standing in line to move, to go to a different room. They'd be standing in line to use the washroom. They'd be standing in line to get their snack. We started doing like body movers. So how to be active during transition time. So again, how do we create that into policy? So what we presented, which is more of a recommendation right now, it's not an official policy, is any program over 3 hours should have 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity. So our day camp program is 6 hours. It could extend to 8 in some areas, but our Park Kids program. So again, how does policy create physical activity opportunities? I can share this after obviously the PowerPoint, but we also create a wellness center. So what were wellness centers? They were funded through Blue Cross Blue Shield and they were funded through Abbott Labs. So what they did was they opened up, we had family dinner nights at once a month. We'd offer free, with our Greeter Food Depository, free healthy meals. It was always a whole grain starch, vegetables, fruit for dessert, or a healthy oatmeal cookie, low fat, and then a lean meat or vegetarian. And we had doctors come in and dietitians come in, and then physical activity partners come in. So they would have a 2-hour fun night with their family, sitting at a table together, learning and also eating together. So I think it's a national problem, but I know in Chicago, families don't eat together for dinner much anymore. So this was just another way to get families to sit, pause, and understand the importance of conversation at dinner. We also had different, and we still have this, we also have people come in. So we had vaccination hesitation town halls. We had some vaccination clinics come in. Some parks turned into testing sites. But we also have things like AA at parks, which, some of the hospitals would extend, or local clinics. We changed our vending machine. So in Chicago, we were one of the first, I think we made it in Time Magazine, first park to change their vending machines. And I could not have done that alone. Although I was able to spearhead it and find champions, I needed Lurie Children's Hospital, and I needed Change Lab Solutions. Write that down if you're looking to change policy with the park. They were able to get lawyers to look at our policies on vending and put words and language together to show the importance of changing the vending machines to 100% healthier. So our snack machines were the first. And again, this takes town halls with the staff. It took town halls with the baseball associations, park users, the attendants who are like more of janitorial services to understand their impact. We asked people, parents, if they wanted the vending machines changed. So we sat with parents and 98% said yes. But what we looked at is what kind of food do we want in them? We sat down with the American Heart Association, which has a very large office in Chicago, and we looked at the guidelines for that. We met with the National Vending Association and looked at what their healthy choices were. So although people wanted to do 50% healthy, we really stood strong to say it had to be 100%, because if you're offering 10 rows healthy and 10 rows not, that opportunity was still there to offer. And what the parents said was, if I give my children money, I don't want them to have the choice to get the flaming hot. So, and again, this isn't like cancer, reducing foods. Like, we try to get some antioxidants in there, but it's low fat, lower salt, high fiber, some peanut-free options, baked chips versus fried. And then the harder one was the beverages, because beverages really made a lot of money. So going to 100% sugar, sweetened free, I knew that as leadership changed, my policy and all the work, or all the work would be out the window without a policy versus contract. So looking at contract language versus policy was a tough one that we won. And that's still active. There's a white paper on this showing how we did it. If you're interested, I can send that along. And then again, just talking about vaccination, nutrition, all that. This is a resolution that was put together in 2016, that we have an employee wellness policy, and we also have a park user policy. But the park employee one is very important. So we give all fitness centers free of use to all of our employees. We give all free classes if there's space. And then we promote physical activity breaks. So that was a resolution. And then we also declared the first week of May, in coordination with the physical activity guidelines, or ACEs, which is all children exercising simultaneously, to have a Chicago Move Day. So all of our mayors acknowledge that the first Wednesday in May is Chicago Move Day. If you're not familiar with, I put this up here, jot it down, clock.net. I'm presenting with them next Tuesday, the Consortium to Lower Obesity in Chicago Children. And so they have a logo called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. It's 5 fruit and vegetables, 4 glasses of water minimum, 3 lean dairy products or alternatives, 2 hours or less of screen time, and 1 hour physical activity, which is in recommendation of the physical activity guidelines for Americans, which we work with as well, and I'm sure you do as well on this subcommittee.
So 2 things, Colleen. One, just a comment on the previous slide. In case people don't know it, the Chicago Park District is separate from the city of Chicago.
Correct.
So you are autonomous to a great degree, which gives you the flexibility to do a lot of the things you'd want to do. The second point is a question from one of our attendees. How are you motivating families to take part in your programs like the family dinners? Sure,
great question. So again, it's, priority is what people work on, right? And so social media, we definitely do the social media, but we also understand that not everyone looks at social media, thank goodness. So we do local outreach to community clinics, to schools. We work very closely with the Chicago Public Library System on cross promoting. And then we did do a pilot, which again, we're trying to get better, but pediatricians would tell the families about them as well through any pediatrician that works with Lurie's. So those are our media streams. We do some outreach to our local networks, ABC, NBC, WGN, which is a lot more local. And then also Channel 11, which is, public radio. Any ideas, though, we are open to, please. We are sometimes known as, old school at the Park District. So if there's any other ways to promote this that you've had success with, I'm definitely open to that recommendation. And so moving into the next slide, how we get a lot of our word of mouth is through our program participants. So we can send out emails to all of our programs through the ActiveNet registration system. So out of school time, if you're not familiar with that, that's obvious, that's become a very well-known terms, at least in National Recreation and Parks Association, but also parks. I've seen out of school time as well in different school systems. It's really looking at, with more parents working, with more single parents, the importance of out of school time. There's a lot of out of school time networks for public health professionals to show how violence can be reduced through out of school time. Food insecurity, obesity rates, there's a ton of data out there on it. Not that we collect, but that our out of school time partners do collect. So our out of school time effort started in 2006. I'm realizing how old I am and how long I've been here. But really we've been a lead partner through this. And again, why I mentioned I was a mom earlier is what's been helpful and has been really negative, through COVID, the transportation was cut. So we have, hundreds, I think 700 schools in Chicago. The bus from the school would take kids from different neighborhoods to the park. So we'd have multiple schools showing up with buses at parks. So we would increase socialization. If someone didn't, necessarily get along with the kids at their school, they could meet new youth. So definitely enrichment programs, socialization, nutrition programs, and then we would offer unstructured and structured play through our Park Kids program. That and day camp, which runs about 6 to 8 weeks of summer for 6 to 8 hours, that's really the core of our out of school time program. But as we're looking at this, we're starting to look at teen programs, baseball programs, art programs. We have a ton of nature programs at the Park District. We have nature preschools. That is all considered out of school time. So pretty much it's changing from those 3 to 6 p.m. to evenings and weekends. So anytime kids aren't not in school, it's considered out of school time. So we really had a just and change at the Park District is when the schools had strikes, we had to open up our doors, considering it out of school time. When kids are off of school for report card pickup, we had to adjust. Winter breaks, spring breaks, adjusting again to out of school time. So we're transitioning to be that solution when schools are closed. And so this is national, this graph here. How many out of school time programs there are in larger cities and towns. So Washington, D.C., LA, New York, all of that. So this is something that I've been, again, honored to do, start a committee at the Park District back in 2019 of October, right before COVID hit. And I have a meeting tomorrow. So we've been able to keep this out of school time committee that's run through park supervisors, physical instructors, area managers, which are managers of various parks. We were able during COVID to put together, what do we want to make sure that every child is exposed to? And again, this would be lovely if management, upper management did this. But what's more intentional and more impactful is that these core components put together by the program delivery staff. And I think that is important to say because as researchers, and I've done a lot of research, so I'll consider myself a researcher, it's great to put things together, but if it doesn't have the input of the program delivery staff or the customers, it's so much more impactful because they feel that they had a voice and a choice. So these are our 6 core components. That is fairly new. We're making sure that everyone at the Park District knows about it. In case anyone watches this, brain play. So when we met with the staff at the parks, we said, what do you love? What program do you love and what program do you not love? And they'd say Park Kids. Well, after sitting here for an hour and 10 minutes, hearing how important Park Kids is, we said, why wouldn't you like that program? It's so important. And they said, because parents yell at us to make sure they get their kids' homework done. Interesting input. So what we wanted to do was going back to the media, going back to telling parents what the program is it's brain play. It's incorporating the STEM, not just saying your kids are going to get their homework done here. Because that sometimes wasn't optional, given that the kids needed iPads or computers to do it. And we don't always have that at the park. So making sure that we're stimulating the kid's brain and enriching the children's brain through games that are, or maybe it's a crossword puzzle sometimes, but making sure that they're, mentally engaged, doing team building skills, making sure that everyone's involved and inclusive. Nature, very, very important. We do a ton of scavenger hunts with nature. And then one thing with violence, I had a park say to me, Colleen, it's great that you're showing nature, but I can't leave my park because the gun violence is so bad outside. Check in, right? Let us make sure that all of what we're training in is inclusive. So what we looked at is having nature music, having nature sound, doing nature art, and then also showing on a screen different nature scenes. So again, changing, transitioning to each community. Although we'd want the violence gone, we knew that we couldn't solve that right away. As Tom would know, sports and recreation is probably the heart of the park district in many areas. Many people do sports and recreation. It's one of our most popular programs. But is it baseball? Is it football? Is it archery? Is it rugby? Making sure that we're offering enough sports exposure to youth that would be inclusive. Fitness and wellness, obviously, very important. Visual and performing arts, and then electives. Voice and choice, we have social justice team, we have the junior achievement, money management. So those are all electives. So those are the core components. So what we look like is what we're trying to look at is color coding to make sure when you look at a program, it's engaging all this. So that goes back to how, as professionals for public health, do we ensure that kids are getting their 60 minutes of physical activity? Because you can do it through really any of these things. What's most important when we need help on, so if anyone's out there that wants to have a further discussion later, is values. What are the core values of out of school time? Civic leadership, inclusion, voice and choice, health and wellness, equity, which is so important. We have a lot on health equity that we're trying to make very high priority in the park district, and that will take time. Community building, we can't do things without partners. We can't do things without park advisory councils and voice. And then social emotional learning. We have one social worker in a role doing social work at the park district, and I'm the only dietitian. So how do we get social emotional, whether it's curriculum that's out there, but we definitely need some mental health 101 in parks. So we are doing a summit with Lurie's on mental health 101. When do you take your child seriously if they say they want to hurt themselves? We're planning that right now for early spring. But again, if you have ideas, let's talk about them at the end of this, or let's definitely talk after. Inclusion, I just want to bring up, because inclusion, we changed this many times. We had girls and gender equity under inclusion. We had people with disabilities, but really it's all inclusion. And so having the conversation and training around how do we get LGBTQ plus training in the park district. So we definitely changed that word to inclusion to be a broader, to make sure that whether someone's bullied or someone has a disability, it's being inclusive. Okay, NRPA, National Recreation Parks. You've heard me say this over and over and over again, but they are a parent. That's where we go to find our data. That I work with them hand in hand on a regular basis. They just put us through a 3-day training with a core 5 of people at the park district professionals to go through a health equity training, roadmaps on racial equity, health equity, all of it. And so quality parks are just one aspect of health equity at the community level, right? You don't need a building. Walking through a park is just as important as walking through a building. And so making sure that those are all beautified in every neighborhood. And it's really just a piece of the puzzle to solve on health equity. This is something that's open to all of you. I know this is a PDF, so you can't link on it, but if you just search health equity 2 and NRPA, this is a very large book and framework for action. And it includes mental health, it includes public health, it includes hospitals, who you need at the table to reimagine inclusion, to focus on health equity in parks, public health in parks, and respecting the environment. So if you have some moments, take a look at that. Okay, so the current pillars of health at the park district and health equity. We do it currently through nutrition. We have healthy food policies, as I spoke about. We have OST and after school supper programs. We have nutrition hubs. We have farmers markets. That's how we do it. Physical activity. So free access to fitness centers, lap swim, Move Your Way, which I've not gotten to, I don't believe yet. Move Your Way is a national campaign. Hopefully you know about it. It started as a grant out of the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. You can find it at health.gov, but it really talks about how do you get people moving and understand that every minute matters to get to your 60 minutes of physical health. And then the step challenges we do, we have bike challenges where you can win prizes. And then wellness and mental health. So incorporating those values, like I spoke on out of school time, having trainings on health from outside partners and internal partners for both employees and patrons, nature spaces, mindful minutes, and trainings. So those are the pillars we have now on how to get to health equity. But again, that's not everything that we need. So it's still growing. So this is Move Your Way, health.gov/move your way. That's how you're going to find out. There's English and Spanish, talking about equity. We're working on that as Park District, is making sure that every survey that goes out is in English and Spanish. And we understand there's a lot more languages that we need to have access to. But the hashtag is Get Your 60. And so about 15 cities got this grant. We were one of them. And we try to put Move Your Way on all of our physical activity promotion. These are some of the flyers. There's one for health professionals. There's one specifically for health professionals and not only doctors, but nurses and community clinics as well. And if there's one for seniors, there's one for parents, there's one for youth, and everything's in English and Spanish. So again, a lot of free material that was created through a grant, all on Office of Disease and Health Prevention to get your 60 minutes of physical activity, which I know all of you are very interested in. Okay, Parks and Public Health. So here are the agencies that we work with: Active Trans, offering healthy food access and access to open spaces for parks and physical activity and mental health. Health education, again, not only on nutrition and physical activity, but we're looking to get health education overall on vaccinations per se. Decrease environmental pollutants and act as health opportunities to promote community health. So this is your turn to either put in the chat or say out loud. Let's make something out of this hour. God, I'm talking a lot, hour and 15 minutes so far. Almost done. Thank you for sticking with me. Can just jot down 1 to 3 things you feel, whether it's yourself, your agency you represent, APHA, how can we work together to improve the focus of physical activities and mental health overall in parks with the focus of health equity? I'm gonna look at the chat real quick. And is there anyone, well, I'm going to be quiet. I have a problem being quiet. So let me pause for another 30 seconds.
Do you, I think you talked maybe a little bit around this, but do you do any type of focus group activity to get the input of various communities involved in terms of the potential activities or programs you might want to sponsor?
It's a great question. We have done them. We actually did one a few years ago where every 77 communities had a series of meetings. We definitely do focus groups. We could do more. But we do work with the Department of Public Health, and we have youth focus groups. And then we have different chronic disease focus groups as well on that time. But again, it's an interesting thing because we don't do them alone usually. We do them with park advisory councils or like Alerith Children's Hospital. So again, I always think there's more room to do focus groups, but we do them.
So we have another question, and I think it's a good one. It kind of relates to the slide about the large parks participating in out of school time activities. Are there ways that you know of to scale whatever the big parks and recreational facilities do down to match the needs for smaller communities? And is that something that you might be familiar with, or is that something that the National Recreation and Parks Association might have in their repertoire of programs?
So I'm going to make sure that I'm understanding the question right, so I answer it in my best ability. So what you're saying, if they're the smaller community, so not necessarily like urban like Chicago, but maybe a smaller village or suburb, or are you saying that more of like a smaller community within Chicago?
No, smaller communities. Your first
Okay,
point.
sure, sure. So out of school time network or after school alliance does have specific rural, small, and large out of school time curriculum, resources. But to me personally, I think we're doing pretty good in a large city with coordinating. Like I meet with Chicago Public Schools every other week, but in a smaller one, it actually might be easier to have that network to communicate more often. So what I would say is this: if you're going to take this and use it as a toolkit, is you need the parks and the schools, number one. You need your local health, some kind of a clinician in there, and then the libraries. That is really the four. So Madison, Wisconsin, I keep in touch with a colleague out there. Their park district is run very differently. It's run in collaboration with the schools. So you're a school and a park district employee. So they do a lot of right after school. It turns into a park. And we actually have, I think, about 11 of those that when the school closes, it actually turns into a park. Because that's the problem. The challenges is transportation. So in some of these smaller suburbs, that might be harder because the school and the park may or may not be closer. And I know in suburbs, like they're spread out more, right? You have to get in the car to drive somewhere. But the after school alliance and then there is also the out of school time alliance. I might be saying it wrong. They do have toolkits for smaller communities.
I think that probably goes to my point about being able to do focus groups, even if they're informal, to understand the needs of your specific community.
Yep.
So that you can match your resources, whatever they are, to the needs in a way that prioritizes the interest of the community at large.
And a good sample on that is this, like I talked about the suburbs is, so right now our busing was cut. Chicago Public School System cut their transportation to parks. So now we have no way to get the kids to the park. So we had, this is an interesting one, a bunch of parents decided to put together their own group to tell the park what we should do. And they said we should have a walking, I don't know if you know a walking school bus, but we did it years ago where a parent volunteer would walk the kids if it's close enough, but sometimes it's 6 blocks from the school to the park. Another one is they might jump on the local, like the Chicago transportation, they might jump on a bus to get there, but you need that focus group to come up with ideas of who's willing to be a partner in this, right? So that's, another one that I sat in on an NRPA was the local grocery store in a small community came in and did cooking classes. So again, yeah, it's it's not cookie cutter by any means. Even in a park district, we offer 115 park kid programs. Each park kid looks very differently, right? We may have one neighborhood. We have a neighborhood in Chinatown that they created their own little library system. And then they also did, with the Chinese New Year, they do special events around that. So making sure that we're celebrating ethnic communities in Chicago is another very important part that I did not bring up. But each community, we have Chinatown. I live in a very Polish oriented neighborhood. We definitely want to celebrate the culture and incorporate into programs. So whether it's a suburb or whether it's Chicago, you still have that little, that small community focus.
So we have another question. Do you have different programs for the LGBT population?
Yes, I actually, I have a meeting on that. So we have a great, it's out of our culture, arts, and nature. They have something called Queering in the Parks. And it's been around for 3 years. What they do is they do LGBTQ celebration at parks. They have DJs, they have art, they do murals, and they celebrate LGBTQ in the Chicago Park District. And what's interesting, I'm glad you brought that up because I don't think I would have remembered to talk about this. Lurie's Children's, again, our lovely partner that has 5,000 departments within Lurie's, they have a child advocacy center, and we did mobile health buses. And so the mobile health buses would visit the event Querying the Park and other events, and they would do HIV testing. They would have information on PrEP. They would do alcohol and drug screening at these parks, given that sometimes the groups have a higher risk. So that's a really good example of how we've been able to work with the healthcare system and have a mobile health come to LGBTQ and talk about suicide, mental health, alcohol screening, HIV screening, all of that. And I haven't gotten the results back from that grant because they just ended in October, November. And as you know, with research, it takes a long time to go through that. But, you know, that's another opportunity to share once I get that data from Lurie's.
So another question. In Colombia, which is where this question is coming from, we have problems of safety and drug addiction in parks. How does the Chicago Park District handle those issues?
Great question. And, you know, I can't speak for Colombia, but I have to say that we have a large percentage of, and I won't name the neighborhood to, you know, stereotype or anything, but a ton of needles. We have had a large increase in finding, unfortunately, dead bodies in the park from overdoses. And working with the police is one, you know, is one way, but really it's mental health and making sure that we're providing those services in the park. So though I can be very clear to say we don't have a solution, but is working with the mental health clinics, the different people who have home insecurity, and that there's shelters nearby to try to work together, right? Because when we brought this to the park, that's trauma, right? That's trauma walking in and kids seeing dead bodies and staff seeing dead bodies. It's the cause of why that's happening. And so having conversations around that is what we've been able to do. But we have not come to, you know, to be honest, one thing that's been presented to us at the park, and it's, you know, our staff is like, please don't, we're short staffed right now. We can't even think about this, is having opioid addiction and having Narcan available in the park for people to get. I mean, that's a conversation that, how do we solve that as a park, right? It's really a public health problem, but how are we part of the solution in the park when people don't even feel comfortable giving CPR in some situations, right? So again, it's something to continue to discuss.
How do you, I mean, this goes back to a point you've made a couple of times, and I think that I've raised. It's really important for park districts and recreation districts to partner with all the members in important organizations in their community. And one would be the local police, obviously.
Yep.
In you know, one of the big issues in public health is social determinants of health. And one of the barriers that's often discussed when you're talking about social determinants of health is unsafe neighborhoods. And whether it's walking the streets to go to a park, the people that live in a particular area need to be able to feel safe in order to access locations or places that they could actually use in a safe manner. And so how often do you interact with the Chicago Police Department, at least at the headquarters level, in issues like this?
Pretty regularly. And we have a, you know, just to be completely transparent, is there's a large problem of anti-police and pro-police in Chicago, which is very hard depending what neighborhood you're in. And so we've been doing it for years, but the awareness around it is we did a summer kickback series where it was focused on teen taking on a Friday night safely in parks. And the police would come in and they would do water balloon fights, they do softball games. We have one park that does yoga with the police. We have we do a lot with the police. We did a 5K 3 times last year where the police sergeant ran it. But those are the people that want to participate, right? The question is how do we get the conversations around, there's always a few bad something, right? But we work with the police quite a bit. But I had someone say to me, why do you have all the security at the run that intimidates people to have security there and police officers there? And we're like, well, we're actually doing it to start conversations. So it's one of those where there's no good answer. But we are in very close contact with the police. We also host every September Chicago Nights Out event, where it's a whole big fun event with food and music, where it's the police department and the Chicago Park District putting it on together. Some have like an old car, why can't I think of what I'm talking about? Like the old cars would be there, and it's just an event hosted by the Chicago Police Department and the Chicago Park District. The harder problem is how do we get the people that, would never come to that to start to have the conversations. And again, I'm not the expert in it, but I just, being here long enough to understand the temperatures and the tensions, that's like a really deeply rooted problem that I'd love to have a solution to.
Yeah, I think one way is to, one of many ways is probably to, as much as you can, involve trusted community leaders
Yep.
in the discussions to help facilitate that bridge between whether it's perception and reality, or to give the people the confidence that things may not be as bad as they are. And if they are that bad, then the community leaders can help leverage with the policymakers ways to solve the problems in the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we have another question here, and I had to laugh because I think I know the answer, or at least I know that my parents had the answer. Where are you doing all of this in the winter? Is there a kind of similar program indoors?
Okay, so let me just be specific to which all programs overall in health equity.
I do your programs generally.
Okay, yeah, we are booked in the winter. We have, I'm going to say, I had an earlier slide, but I think we have 71 pools. I think we have 20 plus indoor pools. So our pools are jammed. We have a ton of programs indoors. One of our largest programs is our ice skating rinks and our speed skating. We just said that. We do sports in the winter. Our running program is very strong. I will say that our landscape, which I think is very important because we haven't brought up the term health in all policies, but our landscape teams are always out there at 5 o'clock to make sure that our the sidewalks are as clear, and the lakefront's probably the first place that gets cleared off. But we're very busy in the winter.
Yeah, to clarify, I had to laugh because when I would come home, and this is the same for every family in the neighborhood, you got a kick in the butt and a boot out the door. And the only place to go was to the parks. And if they froze the fields over and you could play hockey, that's great. Yeah. But if not, you made your own fun.
Yeah.
And going back to one of my earlier comments, that unstructured play, even when it's 15 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, I don't know, -10 or -15 centigrade, that unstructured play is something that is really important for developing young kids. And the parks were a place where summer or winter, hot or cold, a place where kids would be able to engage in those activities.
So again, I could go on and on and on, but Tom, you're so right. We have a ton of sledding hills. We have a couple that are made, one at Soldiers Field, one at Warren, another one in the south, that are like, they have the stairs. It's almost like where the old toboggan used to be. They're actual sledding hills. But our programs, we actually did a training on winter nature and the importance of teaching kids that nature is so beautiful in the winter, but you got to have your hat and your gloves. And so we had special letters that went to the parent to say, your children will be outside in the winter. That is one of our things. That is one of our program elements, is nature. So it is. I mean, that first snowfall, which was supposed to get dumped, I don't know if it's going to happen. Right now it's saying it's 52 in Chicago and tomorrow's supposed to be 10 inches. You never know. And so that's the beauty of each season is like a new park district, right? Where you can program. So, okay, so this is our last slide of why do we care? Why do we care about health disparities and eliminating them? Why do we, given specific roles of parks and green space, promote health, wellness, and collaborative efforts to promote community health, which is crucial? Why do we research? And to research is to find solutions, right? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And then also efforts to achieve health equities through diverse perspectives and groups of people, which Tom, you're right on it. The only way to do that is through focus groups. And, just conversations. And then also revealing that urban parks and really rural parks too, but are associated with lower risks of obesity, cardiovascular disease, diminished mental health, and other health conditions. We haven't even, I think, almost graduated from my Master's of Public Health, crossing fingers, right? But we have not touched, I feel, the tip of the iceberg of what's post-COVID. And it's just, as a parent, I can't not think about it. As a professional, I can't not think about it. So I would like to keep this conversation going of what can we explore? How do we fill the gap of connecting public health research and practice in parks? Because we can't do it alone. I'm just a nerd who loves research and loves parks and loves public health. Like it's something that I've been honored to always be in, but we cannot as parks do this alone. And I'm grateful for every research that approaches us, whether we can or can't, it brings up a discussion. So we need to create successful models. We need to create toolkits so we can share this with other cities and find those next steps. And that is it. It's how do we continue this conversation? I would love to, present with public health professionals at NRPA, showing the parks how to, because there's a lot of people that work at the park. I went to National Recreation and I sat in Texas. It was a lady from Texas, the city of Texas, and they said, 300 people in a room, raise your hand if you think that you're a health professional. And maybe 2 people raise their hand out of 300. At the end of her hour and a half conversation, she said, raise your hand if you think you're a health professional. And 75%. And that is something that we need to ask ourselves every day. And someone from National Recreation Park said to me, you wake up every day and you say to your staff, are you going to prevent or promote health? And it is something that we need to do every day. Whether you're in a bad mood or a good mood, do you prevent or do you promote health? And so I'm going to end with that. I'm going to thank you for listening to me for over an hour and a half. I never thought I'd be speaking for an hour and 35 minutes, but I think this is a conversation that could continue. I'm willing to answer any questions here or set up some follow-up time if there's even some small focus groups we want to continue. And thank you.
That was great. And we got some great audience participation. And so I thank everyone who's stayed around this long and actually asked some very good and very interesting questions. As Colleen just suggested, please feel free to take down her contact information and get in touch with her directly if you want to follow up on anything that she's talked about. There's obviously, she's obviously has a wealth of knowledge on this topic. And this certainly met, I think, my expectations for the webinar today in terms of really taking a good look at how public health is practiced at the ground level to provide a window of opportunity for people in the research community to find ways to connect their research with the people who are actually doing the work on a day-to-day basis. Jim, Jim Scarborough, I live right next to the Indian ambassador's residence and right behind the zoo. So I'm right with you there. So last but not least, I'd like to thank our sponsors for this program, both the APHA centered sponsors and our sponsors in the private sector, especially the University of Antioquia, maybe I got that right this time, for allowing us to use their facilities and their platform for this presentation. Again, feel free to reach out to Colleen. And I appreciate everyone who has stayed on this long. Hope it was worthwhile to you, because I was certainly, it was interesting to me, and I thought I was very familiar with the Park District, and I've learned a whole lot. So
Great.
Colleen, thank you very much. And again, thanks everyone for this. And have a great day. Be safe, be well, and be careful.
Thank
Thanks,
you all.